Welcome to Longevity Industries podcast presentation of The Destiny of Manufacturing. Our host for today is Dean Phillips, and I will be carrying you through the bushes and through the hills to try and find some nuggets of information for you today. Our guest today is Bob Jones, who is the VP of Operations at Pentaflex, who is also a member of the Precision Metal Forming Association, which is has been kind enough to sponsor our show, along with the Precision Metal Forming Association's Educational Foundation. We really appreciate that. And with that, I want to welcome Bob Jones.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today. We really appreciate it. Now, when this goes out, it will be Manufacturing Day, and I'm looking forward to that, and we will be presenting this live at that time. I want to thank you today from all of our audience, and from my perspective, it's really been helpful to have great guests like yourself on here. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the Vice President of Operations here, which means basically I've got the floor side of the business of a stamping and assembly business with some machining capability. I've got 23 years in the metal forming industry, originally a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, and I've got a couple of masters along the way to guide me in terms of the formal education. So I'd also have the joy of working with people in various businesses, working at Pentaflex currently, but I've also worked at Dana briefly for TRW, which is now ZF, Accuride, and several other companies along the way that all do metal forming for either the automotive or truck industry.
That's great, and we do appreciate you taking time out to be here. How did you get to be at Pentaflex?
Well, Pentaflex called me up. I had an opportunity to come over here and work with their deep draw heavy stamp. That's their specialty. I had been working down at Imperial in Tennessee, which was a stamper for primarily Peterbilt and Kenworth, but also some other truck manufacturers. I had the opportunity to move up here and do something a little bit different with their presses. They have slightly larger presses than we had at Imperial, but they also have servo presses, which is more of a path to the future than what we had at Imperial. Servo presses originally came on as small presses with Toyota and have been a Japanese expertise for a while. The advantage of the servo press, of course, is that it's got all the advantages of a mechanical press in terms of speed, plus the advantages of a hydraulic press in terms of variability of the stroke. And in particular, it can fast and slow stroke and dwell at bottom just based on the programming, which is a huge advantage. So it was an opportunity to get experience with servo presses, and that's been an interesting experience since I've gotten here.
Great. I know that technology, as far as servo presses, is definitely an area that everybody that I know of in manufacturing is exploring if they're doing stamping. I think that the flexibility of it certainly gives you a lot of options as far as controlling your stroke profile, reducing your open height, which means that you can generate more strokes per minute by either using pendulum mode or reducing some of that. That really helps to increase your throughput. And
right. And one of the issues that we're currently working through is you can do different things with the die design with a servo press than you can with a mechanical or traditional. So just throwing the die out of a mechanical or a hydraulic press over into the servo press, you can improve it somewhat, but to get the real benefits, we're still learning how to design a die that really take advantage of that servo.
Right. Yes, I've heard that from a lot of manufacturers, and it is a change in the mindset you have to have from a tooling standpoint too.
Yep, and finding the tooling houses that actually have experience in that and can optimize that has been a bit of a difficulty in the U.S. because this is primarily coming over from overseas, and our tool houses are just learning how to do it.
Sure. Now, one of the features of our show here today is we talk about the future and the destiny of manufacturing with a 5-year outlook. What do you see on that frontier of how things will change internally, how you guys are going to approach things and how you're going to have to execute that plan in order to meet the goals and the needs of your customers in the future?
I think one of the issues that all manufacturing in the United States faces is the cost of labor. Every employee would like to be paid more. Every customer would like to pay less. And so as we look at that, the only way that equation makes sense is to kind of use the paradigm that the coal miners did in the 1950s, which was the deal made between the miners' union and the management of the mines. Basically, they agreed to allow technology to come in exchange for higher wages. The difference was the miners had to become technically competent in managing large machines to do that. It's a historical reference you can search on the web and find, but I grew up with that paradigm since that's the area my family's from, is mining. And it's always made sense that that's the only path you can go forward to pay your people more, is they have to have a higher skill level. The higher skill level will support things like server presses and robots. So I think what you'll see in U.S. manufacturing is a reduction of labor, but an increase of automation. And I think that's a good thing for the workers. It does mean there will be less people in manufacturing, but it means the people that are there will be compensated better and have a higher skill set.
Right. I think technologically, that's an area that we already see a lot of that. I know that you guys are very involved with in the local area with schooling and with STEM curriculums and that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I can, but let me preface that with we have a tremendous difficulty hiring people, just in getting enough people to keep ourselves staffed, and we compete with a lot of other local manufacturers and talk to them. Similar problem across the entire Springfield area, and I know from having worked in other areas, it's not unique. Manufacturing just has a heck of a time getting enough folks to run, which is ironic with the unemployment rate being where it is. What that tells you is there's a skills mismatch. So the STEM is one of the ways that we've tried to assist. The Manufacturing Day as part of that. But getting kids to understand there are opportunities in manufacturing that pay reasonably well and are good career, stable choices that will guarantee them employment. And you need certain skills to work for us. So the skills that we really look for and put a premium on aren't calculus, but the basic skills in math that really assist somebody in learning a trade and in learning tool and die, electricity, and those things are basic algebra, geometry. It helps to understand a little bit of trigonometry. You don't use it on a daily basis unless you're tool and die, in which case you do use a bit of it. And statistics, which is the basic for the quality field. So those math concepts are crucial to us, along with basic literacy. When we look at where we have trouble filling our positions, it frequently comes down to those fundamental skills that people don't have that make it very difficult to promote them and move them up to the higher paying jobs. So those skills equal pay. If you come out of high school and you're good with algebra, geometry, trig, a little bit of statistics, at least basic concepts of the normal curve, and can read and write, we can move you in and we can train you and move you up.
Do you find that you have to do some level of career planning with your new hires to say, look, yes, I'm bringing you in at this level, but this is where your career can take you. You can go down this road, and there will be different spurs you can take off of this road. But the big part you have to understand is that there is an opportunity here for you to carry on. You start at this level, but you're going to progress. And do you find that you have to kind of spell that out for your new hires?
We do. We have a pay for skills program, which has 5 levels for the press room and for assembly. And it's a truncated pyramid for our machining area, because the machining area, we don't put people with our CNC machines until they've proven out in assembly. So they're already in assembly level 1 before they go over to machining. That's spelled out very clearly along with the pay scale that goes with it. One of the things we have issues with, and this is a generational issue, the millennials/I generation, I've heard that phrase recently, and I think it probably fits. Those who always have a I something in their hand, iPod, iPhone, iPad, whatever. Those kids are coming out kind of expecting to be moved straight to the head of the class, and that's a little bit of a struggle with them. The other folks who've been around a little bit longer get it. You've got to learn the basic skills before we move you up in the pay for skills. And we do step up based on, for the press room, the PMA instructional manuals on mechanical presses and on hydraulic presses. We use those manuals and the training package that PMA put together. It's off the shelf, very straightforward. And that helps move them through the training on our presses. Now, the PMA stuff is general because, of course, it's for all presses. And in addition to that, we need to have hands-on with the particular presses to get them a check-off that they know how to run that machine with its controls, etc. Assembly side, we have to go a little bit more into welding. Our key skills in assembly are CNC machining and welding, and the rest of it is pretty straightforward. Doesn't take very long to train because they're specialized machines and they only do one process. So that's the basic routes forward. We have one of our CNC programmers act as our primary trainer for our Oz and Brother CNCs.
Great.
That's the progression system. When they come in new, we've got a series of blocks of training. Because our turbulence is so high, we take about a week to make sure they actually can find their way back to our plant 5 days in a row. And then we take a look at implementing our initial training, because it's an investment from us into the employee to set them down and train them. And that training often covers basics that one would think they'd come out of high school with, but they don't always.
Right.
So basic concepts, basic math skills.
Do you think that they need to have a certain level of problem-solving skills also?
Yes, certainly. One of the issues that you always have as you try to problem solve, some problem solving is always experience. One of the blind spots that folks have is believing that because somebody has their engineering degree, they can walk out, place hands on, and automatically know what's wrong with the machine. Not understanding that engineering teaches the theory behind how the machine's put together, but it doesn't teach you a Haas VF5 or something. It teaches you the general practice, and then you have to go out and get into the machine in particular. That's where the operator, being observant and paying attention to what their machine does normally, how it sounds, how it behaves, is invaluable to the problem solving, because the operator, this is an old Dana phrase, but I use it here all the time. Every operator is an expert in their 25 square feet. Their little 5x5 portion of the shop floor where they work every day, they know more about that space than anybody else. Now, it may not mean they know how the machine runs, but they certainly know how it should sound.
Right.
And how it should behave. And so when they call for maintenance support or for an engineer to come out and look at something, we need to take that seriously, and their description is crucial to finding what the root cause is for their problem. So that ability to identify and communicate what the problems are, and in turn, after a little bit of experience, to start hypothesizing and working out their own fixes for common issues that the operator can resolve.
Yeah, Having come out of the press industry, my background, I found that operators were an invaluable asset to determine problems on machines. A good operator knows how a machine should sound. Obviously, they can look at the parts and they can look and see if there's issues with the machine, but that sound is something that's very specific in normally listening to a machine, and they can hear when things like there's a problem in the gearbox. They can hear gears grinding and things like that, and that can help an awful lot to prevent a problem before it escalates.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of these newer operators, that is a challenge that you have because they don't know what they're listening to, and they don't hear a difference in their eyes.
Yeah. One of the issues that we try to work around, I don't know that anybody really talks about this much, but I do team lead training for my team leads, which is distinct from the initial training that we give new employees and the pay for skills training. With the team leads, I go back in and teach basic business 101, and it's amazing. The team leads are selected for being more senior employees, more motivated, with a personality where they can train others, and they become our trainers. But one of the things that the schools just simply do not comprehend or teach, because teachers are state employees or public servants, basically, and they don't work in the for-profit world, never have for most of them. And so the idea about businesses having to make money and about everything being about the keeping the business afloat to keep everybody safe, the concept that you actually have to perform in order to get your money, that being present isn't quite enough. It helps. It's half the fight, but then you've got to participate. Goes back to that employee who's engaged in helping the business move along versus the one that somehow thinks by showing up and sitting in their seat they ought to get an A. And it's a little bit of a paradigm shift.
Sure. And it's, I think, a change that a lot of companies are having to deal with also is just understanding the employees and how that's changed for them is, the path is its own reward is not a concept that many people hear anymore.
Yeah, what'd you do for me lately?
Right.
I was highly entertained by the last election where Bernie Sanders ran. The fact that he had so many college students that actually thought he could do anything was an absolute indictment of their economics professors.
Yeah.
They don't understand business.
Right.
Got to do something to make money.
Yep.
And teaching, that's one of the things I have to teach the team leads so that as they work with the individual employees, they can help them get their head in the right place in terms of, there's something I have to do in order to get paid, not just showing up.
Right. As far as technology goes, taking a look at the Destiny of Manufacturing's 5-year plan there, what do you see that technologically will be different 5 years from now? What kinds of technology will you be utilizing that you may not be doing that now?
Well, we talked about the servo presses as one area. Second area, obviously, that goes with that is design of die to use the servo presses to the best advantage. And the next layer down on that is relooking at materials. The auto industry has moved progressively towards the high-strength, low-alloy type steels because of the weight savings. And I think you see that with the infamous Ford aluminum pickup that GM has had trouble or has had a lot of fun dumping bricks into the back of.
Right.
But that direction of travel where the manufacturers must make them lighter and lighter and lighter isn't going to change. That's driven certainly by some political agendas in terms of greens and in terms of reducing emissions and the whole climate thing. But it's also kind of a common sense thing where if you can get better gas mileage and gas keeps getting more expensive, why wouldn't you? So
Right.
as that happens, the high-strength low alloys are going to continue to be increasingly a part of every vehicle. And, Ford stepping to aluminum, as much as any of us who like Ford scratch our head with the, are you kidding me? Understanding where that went and why that went, I think you're going to see more aluminum as well. So I think the materials are going to continue to change and to be more and more critical on having less material involved and lighter chassis, lighter body parts on the vehicles. As that occurs, the strain on manufacturing and the precision is just going to continue to go up, which may in and of itself drive many of the traditional presses out of the field. I think the other piece I think you're going to see, and we talk about it on a weekly basis, is automation. If you just cannot get enough people to come in the door and come to work on a regular basis, such that you are constantly running short, management here dislikes overtime every bit as much as the employees do for a different reason. The employees just get tired when we've got to run too much overtime. Management sees that decreases our productivity because as employees get tired, they're less productive. They're also more mistake prone. So our quality issues and exposure to those goes up. It's just not a winning proposition. So, how do you get out of that swamp of not having enough people and even worse, having to ask the people that you have to work extra hard? The only way out of that swamp that we can see is some level of automation, whether it's robots or automatic transfers or synchronizing the machines. And that will open up a couple of positions for very skilled program and electrician type folks to do the automation.
Right.
So I see industry moving towards a high-tech solution to the labor shortage, which has been absolutely pervasive throughout manufacturing in the last 10 years that I know of. We just can't ever quite get enough people.
Yeah. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think the key is getting the right people also.
Yes, certainly getting the right people. Still within manufacturing, our labor force is highly dependent on those people in their late 50s and early 60s who are still at work for all their experience and knowledge. And we really need some younger folks in the manufacturing space, but, we're just not really getting them in.
Sure. Do you see a shift to using more additive manufacturing, either through 3D metal printing or any of that technology, even from the maintenance standpoint of being able to potentially down the road printing things like a gear that you have when there's a problem on a machine?
We've looked at that. The problem that specifically from a stamping house point of view, we define ourselves as a stamping house that does assembly and machining. I'd say the majority of stamping houses do stamping and fabrication. That's certainly what Accuride and Imperial were looking at. But within that, you get to a point where job shopping becomes the issue, where you want to do a production run or you want a job shop. It's really hard to have an operation that is both. And so I see a lot of the additive manufacturing being outsourced to small shops and with their own smaller overhead. And that's what they do because they can take that sort of thing from us and from some of the other stamping houses in the area, and we may only have a couple hours per week of labor worth of it, and somebody else has a couple, somebody else has a couple. So accumulating all of those needs into a shop that specializes in it is, I think, more likely the path you're going to see for a lot of the additive manufacturing. Certainly we do things that are within the normal range, like welding. We do a fair amount of welding. We probably do, on an average day, we probably have about 40 to 60 weld hours where we're welding things together for that amount of time on different welders and, different shifts and so on. But when you get down to very small specialty stuff, we actually have some of our machining done out of house because it's 5 of this and 10 of that, and we have production machines, and it's very hard to do the small runs with efficient changeovers when you're trying to run production right beside it.
Right. Yeah, and
job shopping versus production.
Yeah, and I think you have to know where your value added is and what your niche of that is. I think
Yes.
I think a lot of automotive companies have realized that over the years that there's a significant portion of their business that they don't do anymore because they just, as you grow to a certain level, and you can't justify doing some of the things that you used to do in-house anymore.
Yeah. The number of skill sets that you have to retain to do some of those things just exceeds the ability of an average company to really perform well and efficiently.
Sure. What other things would you like to add that you would recommend to people entering the workforce? What opportunities and suggestions can you make to them that they should look for, and why should they get into this industry?
I think one of the things you have to consider about manufacturing is it makes a real good. I mean, there's something here at the end of the day that you put in a box, you ship out that somebody needs. And when you look at the generation of real goods into an economy, you have all sorts of numbers that people throw around, but a common one is something like 11 service jobs for every one real goods manufactured dollar kind of thing. We've got a ratio. In our case, for instance, we support a number of tool and die shops in the area. We've assessed our competencies and investments, and we have a tool and die trade internally, which is fairly substantial. We've got 12 guys in tool and die, but we do repairs and small fabs. We'll make small die here, but the big die requires so many man hours and so much of an investment. And the techniques today for doing that sort of design, the programs that you need to do the stress analysis and all of that are so expensive that it's not something that a single shop would want to get into. So we support a number of other disciplines out there, from hand welding. We do robotic welding here, or machine welding. But the hand welding we outsource because, again, it's a very high-skill craft, and it's simply something that we don't think that we want to stay in on the long term. We can't support a number of welders, and if you can't support a number of people doing it, it's hard to fluctuate the orders. So there are a lot of secondary operations that we support, and there are a lot of other services that we support that just keep us going. So that primary manufacturing dollar, whether it's out of mining, agriculture, or manufacturing, those prime dollars drive the economy. Everything else is just trailing behind that value creation. And that's critical for this country to continue to generate those sorts of true values. You can only have so many waitresses if your shop in the town is closed.
That's right.
The people stop going out to eat, people stop spending money, and people ultimately leave because it's all driven by real dollar generation, which is what manufacturing is. It is and always has been one of the primary backbones of this country.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, I do appreciate you taking the time with us today. It's been a great conversation, and we want to thank, again, the Precision Metal Forming Association for sponsoring our show here, The Destiny of Manufacturing. And we look forward to hearing this on Manufacturing Day with everybody else out there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you again, Bob. And everybody have a great day.
You too.